What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Make It Custom. I'm Carl Fisher, and today we are back on the 1931 Model A Roadster project. This thing has been sitting in the back of the shop for a little too long, and I really want to get back on it. There's a ton of custom metal work that we need to do, like building a dash from scratch. We're going to do steering work. We're going to do all kinds of stuff on this thing. Try and get all the metal work done. That is the goal. So don't forget to like, click subscribe, hit notifications. Let's start building the dash. Okay, so car's cleaned up, makes me happy. I'm going to start figuring out this dash, and something that I've mentioned before that I am convinced now is probably the best route to go is I'm going to start with a 1935 Ford dash. So what I love about this dash is that it actually very closely fits the top radius of the cowl. The radius of the dash and the cowl are very, very close to being the same. So that will be kind of nice. It does have enough meat to kind of cut things off to keep a little bit of the shape here. I might have to add in areas and kind of smooth things out with a little bit of metal shaping to get everything to fit perfectly, but I think it'll all be worth it. And it's got this beautiful kind of hump that protrudes out that I think is very cool. And the style that we're going for. This will all be gone, as cool as this is. Well, I'm just thinking now, I wonder, do you keep that and then kind of start a new hump here? Because I'm gonna put a gauge here. I'll show you guys the gauge. This is my thought, and why I kind of like the Zephyr gauge is because you can get a gauge that has everything all in one. This one is for a shoebox Ford, but it's the same idea as the Zephyr gauge. This is where my inspiration is coming from, right? It's covered up right now, but there's a center gauge and then a waterfall that comes down on a Zephyr, and that is exactly what I'm trying to do. Give that same styling, you know, the split grille, the split front end. This is a little bit later of a styling on a slightly earlier car. That's what that is to me. So anyway, I would like to put that gauge in here and shape whatever I need to shape so that it fits beautifully and then flows into a kind of center and maybe even comes into a console between the seats. I'm not sure yet. Or at least like a shifter console on the floor with a little e-brake in it. We're kind of thinking about that right now. I'm also considering what's gonna happen behind the dash, but the first step is gonna be trimming this until it fits where I want it, and then filling in the areas that need to be filled and deciding what the center is going to look like. So I'm going to start with trimming. I'm going to start cutting this dash in. Okay, that was short-lived. I think that's a beautiful dash. Don't get me wrong, 36 or 35 Ford dash is a beautiful dash, but we're gonna cut it up so much that it doesn't really make sense anymore. There's just a couple of lines on it that don't make sense. So I wanna put that center gauge in here. So this hump would have to flow into that. We've got these two body lines that are going in here while everything on this car is kind of centered. So those two body lines are kind of misplaced. It would be nice, you know, split grille, split windshield, maybe some kind of a center peak. This kind of tapers down and then comes up right before you'd want it to turn back down again, so you'd have to replace the bottom of that. It's just, and then we're filling all this at the same time. It's just, that's too much work. It's actually easier to go from scratch. So that's what I'm about to do. I'm going to use round, this is just welding wire, 1/8 welding wire. I'm gonna just kind of lay out a wire frame as to what I want it to look like in there. So it's probably gonna be relatively simple, but I think it would look nice if it had somewhat of a center peak, you know, and some radiuses to the edges of everything and just kind of flowy. I don't want it to look like it could have been made out of, you know, MDF or something like that. Like it's gotta have shape. So that's kind of my plan. I would just like a focal point to be the center gauge, and I'd like it to be as high as possible because I do want to leave this bar, because this flows with the door tops all the way around. It kind of continues that body line, so I don't want to interrupt that. So I'm going to start it recessed a little bit underneath it, and then the center gauge kind of right there. And then I think perhaps I may do little glove box doors, both sides. Depending on how things look, how the steering column drop is going to work, that kind of thing. It'll probably come down to about here, the dash. This will be kind of like that, and then down into a center console. That's the idea anyway, but who knows until we actually start cutting wire. I don't know if you guys can see me struggling, but I have been racking my brain pretty hard on what this dash is going to look like and kind of how to achieve the design that I like. And the design always changes, like what I picture in my head versus when I start playing with it in real life. And I think right now I do like kind of the couple of lines that are on here and like the placement of this center gauge. But what I would like to do is basically use, I kind of like to build as I go sometimes. So I think in this case, it's going to help me frame it in as well as get a little further. There's a simple shape I want to do here where this line rolls in and then rolls under. So if I can make that piece that goes across the whole dash that just rolls in and rolls under, it'll give me this center line across the whole thing. And then I can make a convex piece here, probably in two pieces, one piece here, one piece on that side to fill in the top, and then I think a separate piece that just kind of hammer forms maybe a nice roll around this and kind of tapering down in the center. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So I think the easiest thing for me to get started is just to make this piece. I am going to weld this in. This is not a removable dash. It doesn't need to be. Tons of room underneath. We'll be able to have access panels tucked in here. It'll be super, super trick. So I am going to just make it so that basically the profile comes in and then wraps under. So you see that? So it'll kind of match this. Just going to do that. So I'm just going to make that profile and have it kind of tapering a little bit on each side. And that will kind of match our whole theme, I believe. So I'm going to get started on that. So what I've done here is I've just adjusted this back so that it's kind of hitting in the center of this piece of pipe. There's actually quite a bit of adjustment in breaks like this to put different material in here to help you make kind of weird bends. So what I'm doing is I'm going to try and bend this radius into this or somewhat close to it by clamping this onto the pipe, onto this, and using the brake to fold it over. Okay, I think we've done a pretty good job, but it looks like it's not getting this last little bit, so I'm just gonna kind of finish the bend a little bit. I did a pretty good job. Looks nice and straight. You might want to give this dash a tiny bit of a curve where We might end up stretching that a little bit, but the next two bends are gonna be this way on here. So I guess I gotta crush that, but I'm gonna have to just straighten it out later. Yes. Ooh. Okay, we really crushed that. Let's go fix it. Two passes. Pretty stretchy. Love that little thing. Maybe one more. Nice. Okay, now I gotta shrink these edges a little bit to help get the curve in the taper here. Okay, here's the dash piece in there. I like the shape of it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you like how that taper kind of works? Basically, it's a straight taper this way, but it does curve this way now because we stretched this edge a little bit with our little cheap stretcher, and then I just used the kick shrinker on the bottom to give the bottom the same amount of shrink so that we've got an even flowing curve on the dash. I just kind of like the shape. I like how it ends on the sides here. I like that radius matching this radius, and this radius kind of matching this radius in here, even though you don't see it. But then we'll have a nice, cool curve shape to make on the top here, and then the gauge is going to be protruding out from this in like a tapered kind of piece, is what I'm thinking. That's kind of how the Zephyr dashes are. The farthest out piece is the gauge, and then it usually steps in a little bit of a Art Deco design on the side. So I think this is a perfect opportunity to make a hammer form. So I'm going to use some plastic that I've got over here, this white sheet. I'm going to use that and make a tapered, radiused hammer form to inset the gauge as the front face of whatever we're going to call this, the waterfall. So that's next. We'll fit that up, and then we'll find a way to kind of extend the sides and morph it into this dash as well. Hopefully using some profiles to add a little bit more design. All right, here's where I'm at with the form. So basically this is just a very simple hammer form. I've radiused the edge with a router, just a simple wood bit. That's all it really takes. And this plastic, I believe, is UHMW. Yeah, so I've got the same size top and bottom piece. The top one overlaps a little bit. That's going to be fine. That's going to kind of protect our edge from hammer marks. And basically we're going to sandwich a piece of metal in here that's a little bit larger than the profile of this, just enough for us to roll over the radius a little bit. And that's all we're trying to do. We're just trying to get this radius. We don't need much further past that because I'm going to connect it to another piece of metal that is going to kind of surround it and bring it into the dash and wrap the sides. So that's all I'm trying to get out of that. This will be the gauge, and I rounded off the bottom just to kind of end it. Maybe we could do something in here with like a key start and headlight switch, perhaps like a heater control, maybe some clean little Bakelite knobs, but I just kind of leaving space for that because I know I'd like to incorporate that into the dash somewhere, as well as I wanted to stop this because of the potential for a console to have, like, to continue with the bottom of the waterfall. That's something I'm considering as well. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and probably drill a center hole here and here, and then bolt this together so that nothing shifts, and then also just kind of clamp it in place as I'm hammering around it. By the way, that little fancy tool is just from Princess Auto, actually. They were on sale for like 150 bucks. So when Brent was here, he was telling me, oh man, you should get one of those. So I did. I think Eastwood sells them too, not a sponsored thing, just knew I wanted to clean this car and it worked really well. Also, I just hit this part up super quick, makes it look nice. Anyway, very happy with the way this hammer form worked. It's nice and uniform. I did use just the planishing hammer bit to clean it up at the end with a very small planishing head. I don't know where it popped off to, but it's a little bit smaller than this. The smaller the head, the more power it has, so it was helpful on the tighter spots, smoothing it all out and transferring its polish to keep it nice and smoothie. But anyway, that is that. My next idea is to actually step this out one more time. You see that, like, think about like a little bit of a double step. And I want to use this because this is actually the Zephyr body line, and you know how I'm taking some of my inspiration from the Zephyr. Well, why not use the body line just to give it one more little step out as it tapers down. That'll be kind of like the side of the waterfall in the dash, and just a way to extend this to where it needs to get to on the dash. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably make up a little bit of that material, maybe in a bit of a strip. Like, I'll set this up in our little garbage hammer here. This hammer, I'll put these dies in here, and we'll make some strips that we can use to wrap kind of around this, but straight down at the bottom. It's not gonna wrap at the bottom, it's gonna continue straight to the floor, and then hopefully into a console or something like that. It's kind of what I'm thinking. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that next. Okay, for those of you that don't know, this hammer was just built out of scrap metal. There's a whole build on this. I'll put it in the description. We call it the garbage hammer because it's just made of like stuff laying around. It's a sewing machine motor that's usually very cheap, like on Marketplace. Lots of people are trying to build this hammer right now. It's very simple. Check out the build. We're gonna just make a couple of strips right now that have that cool body line in it. All right, here's a little update on where we're at with this shape. I've been trying to, well, you saw I made this strip using the profiling hammer that we made. And I've been shrinking this edge a little bit because when I started to curve this radius into it, this right here is just form. So the sheet metal will take that shape very easily, right? But as soon as you start to add another dimension of bend to it, it becomes shape. So when I'm trying to do this, now, the side that's bumped out needs to be kind of stretched because it's out here. And this one's in here, and it's trying to go this way. So now this becomes further out on the radius we're trying to achieve, which means that there needs to be a little bit more material here. So what I'll have to do is I'll probably have to linear stretch this a little bit in conjunction with what shrinking I've already been doing to make this shape want to be a relaxed fit there. Like some of this can be kind of tuned up. It got a little wild on some of the dies there. We'll see how it comes out by running it through a few more times if we can get this nice. But I mean, if not, then it'll just be a tester piece, and we've learned what we've learned from it and know that we should be pre-stretching and pre-shrinking this area to have that shape. So always when this kind of thing happens, you're kind of learning the shape. That's something that Christian Sosa has always told me too, is that a lot of the time most of the time in his words, he says that the first time is to learn the shape, what it takes to make it. So then the next time, like by this point, if there's too much work into it, we can just throw it away and it'll be faster to make it again, because now we know that we could pre-shrink this area and we could pre-stretch this area a little bit and then run it through and have an easier time with less work, less marking, that kind of thing. But I am gonna still try and save this. I did make another strip so that we can do one for the other side, but now that I know a little bit of stretch here, a little bit of shrink there, we should be able to continue this. But I do think it's gonna look really neat, having that double step, and then this will kind of mold into the dash, and then the bottom part will continue, into the floor. And I'm not sure if I'm gonna just end it at the floor or, bring it into a console, but this is working. I'm happy with it.
Start it up.
Okay, this shape is definitely coming along, and I just keep shrinking a little bit, keep profiling it, keep trying to add a little bit of bend as I'm working it through the profiling machine. And as you can see, this still needs, as we tighten this radius, this flange kind of pulls down again. So I've got to stretch this out to let it come up. So I'm gonna go back to this, give it a little bit of a stretch. We'll go with that, little bit by little bit. So this is where I'm at. Just got this kind of tacked in. I'm just slowly working it wherever it fits tight, and just kind of fusion tacking where I can. It got a little bit away from me right here, so I had to fill a bit of a hole, but just tacking with the TIG. TIG welding is great because it leaves everything still nice and workable. You don't add too much filler. You don't end up having to grind too much. The important thing to do though, which is easier with TIG tacking than it is with MIG, is that when you tack a spot, and if it's not totally perfectly aligned, you just get a dolly, you know, and then tap it with your hammer to align the pieces. It's important to be aware of that whenever you're tacking with TIG or MIG, but especially with TIG because it's so easy to correct as you go with TIG. You can tack a spot and you can kind of manipulate it a little bit and it'll hold its place. Whereas if you were to MIG a spot, the weld is so hard that, and it's so, you know, bulbous because you're adding so much material. You can't just fusion tack or add a tiny bit of material, that it's harder to manipulate once you've tacked. So tacking and just making sure we've got a nice seam. And this piece is looking good. I do really like the kind of bubble effect, the double bubble effect we're getting here. I think it's a really nice shape that's relatively simple to make. And I'm gonna go ahead and start making the other side of this. Now, if you can imagine this other side finish, that will be in the center of the dash coming down to the floor. This extra end will have to be trimmed off, and we'll make a face on this somehow, perhaps with another hammer form or something like that, or maybe we can just do it with the bead roller to make the final face of this. But overall, very happy with the way it looks and the curves that we're getting out of it. I'm gonna keep going and make this other side and get it tacked in. Okay, so what I've done is a little bit of pre-stretch along this edge, a little bit of pre-shrink along this edge. Now we're gonna go back in here and try and get this profile started on the curve to go around the gauge. So it looks pretty good, but you can see that this is kind of tipped up a bit, which means that this still needs more shrink to bring it in. This is kind of level, but it might need a little bit more stretching. But knowing that it needs shrink and stretch before we put it in there is nice because it skips us ahead. It won't take nearly as long to finish this piece, but I'm just gonna go ahead and get her finished. there it is. I am very stoked with the next step that we've accomplished here, which is adding our side pieces to this. The way this is gonna mount, now I do have a little bit of trimming to do before we can actually get a proper visual, but what I'm thinking is, man, I love this piece on the dash. See this slight angle? Matches the angle of the Duval windshield. I love it when things work like that, where you're picking up design aspects throughout different things. So I'm just gonna kind of hold the camera at a bit of an angle so you can get an idea of what it's gonna look like. Because if I hold it down here, it's too high. I have to trim some off the bottom, right? But this is kind of the idea, is that this gauge will be kind of in the center, and I'm actually going to trim, you know, this away so that this sits in a little bit more. So this will actually be touching here. So whatever that distance is, I'm gonna trim it so that this fits in there and it doesn't get too far away from the dash. This will sit lower. Like I said, this will be exposed, but this will be tucking a little bit under that. And then when our panel that has a little bit of radius this way, you know, this is gonna radius in like that. This piece will get cut to almost a point. And I think it's gonna look really good. Tell me what you guys think. I'd love if you guys give me your opinions in the comments on this, as far as the design aspect of it. You know, I've definitely had to kind of work through some stuff with this one. Originally thinking that I could use the 35 Ford dash, and then realizing I want to do a different design, and then trying to design it with the round bar, and then jumping ahead to making this piece. Like I said, my favorite thing about this piece is it's very subtle, but it's got a nice slow radius, matches this radius, which we'll never see, but also this radius mimics this radius. Everything just kind of flows, and just the subtle radius this way is kind of like the subtle radiuses we've got here. Let me know what you think. Thanks everybody for watching. I really appreciate you guys. It's great being back on the Roadster. I just got back from a trip in Japan where we are working on a very special project that you guys will see soon enough. We'll put it that way. I don't really know when it's gonna happen, but exploring some of the Japanese car culture and getting to meet a bunch of the heavy guys out there really doing it in the custom world. Very, very cool. So appreciate you guys. Don't forget to like, click subscribe, hit notifications. Check out the website. We've got some new merch on there. I've got some more merch coming for Make It Kustom. So we've got some hats on order. Definitely gonna do some t-shirts and stuff. Those are in the works right now. Also, for everybody that wants a planishing hammer, there's like 80 people waiting, and I'm on it. I'm definitely making that happen. Also, it's gonna be a busy winter, including getting some classes happening in this shop here in the new year. So lots on the go, lots to think about, lots to do. I appreciate everybody's support. Custom crew membership is $5 a month. End of this video, you can click a link and do that. It's also very appreciated. Also, just have a awesome holidays, and you know, love your loved ones and have a good one. Thanks everybody. Bye-bye.